Hello everyone, this is 2.3 Cognitive Information Processing topic of MPC 001 Block 1 Unit 2. So today we will discuss what is information processing. So cognitive information processing is you can say how we take information from environment, how we process it. Process means how we make sense of that thing, how we encode and store in our brain, how we retrieve whenever it is required. So all these things come under cognitive processing. See how we manipulate our knowledge, or in computer terms you can say how you manipulate the data that you are taking from the environment, right? So there are some principles of information processing. First, that we will discuss. The first thing is that you are seeing there, that is highlighted. You can say the first is the assumption of limited capacity of mental system. So first thing we have to understand that we have limited capacity. Like you cannot process all the information, you can process only limited amount of information. You have to filter out all other information which is not necessary. So that is one, you can say, assumption. And the second one is the principle is that a control mechanism required to observe and encoding, transformation, processing, storage, retrieval, utilization of information. The second thing is how the that will be decided ki which information you have to process, you should process, which information you should not process, and what is necessary, what is unnecessary. So there must be, the next assumption is there must be some like system who monitor all these things, like control mechanism ki we have to process, what we should not process, and what is the necessary information, what is not necessary. So that is the second assumption. Third assumption is, or you can say principle is, that there is two-way flow of information as we try to make sense of the world around us. So understand one thing. Let me explain this like this. Suppose you are getting some information from the environment and through your senses, and that goes to your brain, and brain also stored some information that earlier you have learned. So so what happens is you get these information, and from senses your brain start processing, or you can say making sense of the this information, है ना. And कैसे sense बनाएगा, that makes sense because you have certain stored information. Suppose you have seen from last just like class, I have taken the example of one, like, I think chair. So suppose you have a concept of chair. So chair has four legs, you can sit, you can take rest, and then you have seen some chair like beach chair. Then that information goes into your brain, and your brain like find out related information from memory, and it process the same thing, and the result is like, then you identified that it is a, like, you can say beach chair, है ना. So it is a chair, but it is a beach chair because it is like used at beach, right? So this is the thing. So, and we call it next line, if you will see, we constantly use information that we gather through our senses, and that is bottom up process. Like you are getting information from outside, and information we have stored in the memory as we discussed, and we also use that, or we call it top down processing. So understand these two terms, right? And so this is the third principle. And the fourth principle is, like generally accepted by cognitive psychology, is that the human organism has been genetically prepared to process and organize information in a specific way. Understand one thing, like we are like designed to learn, store information, and learn language, etc. If you see, in any country, in ethnic group, any place in this world, if that person, like all human uh, children, you can say, they start speaking at the age of 1, and they start walking at the age of 1, and they start holding his or her neck at the age of, like, between the age of 3 and 6 months. So that happens everywhere. So the fourth principle is, like, we are wired, we have a blueprint or to process the information and all, because language is kind of information processing when you are learning the language. So fourth principle says that we are, as a human being, we are wired, or you can say we are genetically prepared to learn or process information, right? So these were the different principles. So principle 1 was like limited capacity. Second one is like there is some control mechanism. Third one is there is a two process. And the fourth one is like we are genetically prepared. And then we are coming to information processing in learning and memory. Learning and memory is very important, because how you learn, how you memorize and store the information, that will make you what you are. Because if suppose if you have not able to learn or memorize anything, what will happen to your knowledge? Similarly, like, you have seen a movie that I think Gajini was the name, where Amir Khan was like has problem in short-term memory, so he was not able to remember the thing, so he has to write on his body. So that kind of thing, because when you are not able to remember, then this kind of problem may happen. So one of the primary area of cognition studies. One minute. So one of the primary areas of cognitive or cognition studies by researchers is memory, because memory is what that makes you, because you store information and on that basis you perceive your world. So there are many hypotheses and suggestions as for how this information occurs, and many new theories have built upon established belief in this area. So how you learn and how you memorize and store, that is the most important part of this information processing, or you can say cognitive psychology. So Saster and Turing stated that memory is a system is defined in terms of its brain mechanism, the kind of information it processes, and the principle of its operation. See how they information process, what are the different principles related to that, how they process all these things. That is cognitive, you can say, processing. So and then again there are different names, you can remember these names and years with definition to write in your examination. You will get good marks, because if you remember one or two definitions. So Elias Smith defines memory as journal ability or faculty that enables us to interpret the perceptual world to help organize response to change that take place in the world. So what Elias Smith says, कि memory is a general ability. As I said, if you don't have memory, so you will not recognize like who you are, what you are seeing. You are not you will not be able to interpret world around you. All those things will happen, right? And then Wynne and Snyder attributes the idea that memory is organized into structure, and the work of Sir Frederick Charles Bartlett's work established two consistent pattern regarding recall. First, recall means you have stored the memory, how you will recall that memory when it is required. So first, like thing is, like first, memory is inaccurate. This was the new concept, like memory is inaccurate. And his second finding was, though brought about somewhat of revolution in traditional thinking about memory, but it suggested that inaccuracy of memory is systematic. So let's understand in this, like with an example. So Bartlett said that memory is inaccurate, um, and it is, this accuracy is systematic. Means कि suppose if you have seen certain event, right, and you don't have a certain information related to that event, so you will fill that like gap, and that is why it becomes inaccurate. That is why, take one example, you can say, uh, how you perceive things depends on your experiences, how you have felt in the past. Suppose there are, like, there is an accident on the road, and there are 10 people who are watching that incident. You speak to each of them separately. They will say, some will say car was so fast, other will say nahi, there was no cause, was like car was in the limit, like whatever the limit was, and there is a fault of that other person. Some will say that there is a fault of that car driver. So you will get 10 different accounts. Why this happens? Because everyone is interpreting the event in a different way depending on their experiences. So in this way, this memory becomes inaccurate. So we try to fill the gaps, whatever information we don't have. So understand that thing. Then cognitive information modeling, CIP, of learning, that now we will discuss. So the the information theories approach learning primarily through a study of memory. The following cognitive information processing uh, model of learning presents a well established paradigm of cognitive behavioral psychology. The model articulate the limited capacity of working memory. Now we have to understand the what is working memory. So working memory, I think I have told you in last class what is working memory, but no worries, I will again tell this thing. Like working memory is like a RAM, random access memory. If you are aware about that computer and mobile, then you know that. So it is kind of memory where you manipulate information. You bring information from your memory and from your environment. You, in that space, you manipulate that thing. And after manipulation, any calculation, whatever you are doing, logic or whatever you are doing. So when you get the result, other then there is no need of that space. That is the thing. So that is the place where you like manipulate all the information, or you do some cognitive operations जिनको हम बोलते हैं. And it is like using rough paper. You can say you have a rough paper where you like do some rough exercises, and then you forget about it. So that kind of thing. So that is working memory. So the model articulates articulate the limited capacity of working memory. So when there is a space where we do all these things, so we call it working memory, and that is limited. Means suppose if you have a phone and the RAM is like 3 GB RAM, so you can only do the work of 3 GB in that space, not more than that. तो वर्किंग मेमोरी इज टास्क्ड विद द बर्डन ऑफ प्रोसेसिंग इनकमिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन. तो वर्किंग मेमोरी क्या होता है, जो इनकमिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन है वो उसके अंदर आती है ट्रांसफरिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन टू लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी एंड रिट्रीवल फ्रॉम इन्फॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी. सो वर्किंग मेमोरी क्या करती है, वॉट एवर इन्फॉर्मेशन यू आर टेकिंग, तो वर्किंग मेमोरी प्रोसेस इट एंड सेंड टू लाइक लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी इफ इट इज़ रिक्वायर्ड. एंड working memory also takes the information from the like long term memory that is stored and process that in like working space, that working memory. So sometime it becomes too overwhelming or extra, and we call that situation cognitive load. We call it cognitive load. The amount of work imposed on the working memory by learning task is based on observation of function of working memory. ठीक है. So that was working memory. Information processing is in memory can be viewed as computer model. Computer model perspective, because when computer, so it was thought that this model I say is like computer as जैसे computer हम information को store करता है, use करता है, similarly the human mind also does the same thing. So what computer does is like computer encodes in binary language whatever information you like from input devices you give to computer converts it to like binary language or whatever language the person is, and we call this process encoding, and then computer stores it in your hard drive in your computer, and when it is required and like you can like find out in that information. So and that information, and that is like and that process is you can say is controlled by some mechanism जो कंट्रोल करता है कि विच इंफॉर्मेशन विल कम आउट एंड हाउ इट विल वर्क, दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग. So that control mechanism is there. So that was the computer model of memory, you can say. So similarly, human brain takes information from the like environment, convert it into the electrical and chemical thing that I think I have discussed. We call this information, this process transduction, and that goes into the brain, and brain process it. If requires, it will be like sent to long-term memory. Otherwise, it will we will lose that information because it is not necessary to use. So in this way, our brain works just like computer. That was the assumption of computer model. Then development of memory and information processing. So previously stated cognition is encoding, structure, storing, retrieving, and now you know what is like. Let me clean it first, and then I'll start. Right. So you can say like cognition is encoding. You know what is encoding, structuring, how you store information, just like in library systematically you do, storing and then store, and then retrieving whenever it is required, you like retrieve it using otherwise learning knowledge, right? There are important development aspect of each activities according to Flavel et al. From the information processing perspective, some of the most important are brain, you can say the brain 1 minute, let me clean it and then we'll start, right? So brain changes brought by biological maturation and process. So brain change होता है with biological मैच्योरेशन, मतलब जैसे जैसे बच्चे से हम बड़े होते हैं, जैसे जैसे ब्रेन मैच्योर होता है उसकी प्रोसेसेस भी चेंज होती हैं. इसीलिए शायद कि जो बहुत छोटे बचपन की चीज़ें होती हैं हमें याद नहीं रहती हैं, बिकॉज दैट टाइम वो सिस्टम इतना लाइक मैच्योर नहीं हुआ है. तो फर्स्ट थिंग इज़ दैट. सेकेंड थिंग इज़ इंक्रीज्ड प्रोसेसिंग कैपेसिटी, स्पीड एंड इफिशिएंसी एज ए रिजल्ट ऑफ बोथ मैच्योरेशन एंड नॉलेज. एंड जैसे जैसे हमारा ब्रेन मैच्योर होता है हम नॉलेज बेहतर इकट्ठा करने लगते हैं, एंड विद दैट पेस ओनली like our processing capacity of information increases, right? If suppose like a child you give a mathematical problem to a child who is like 5-10 year old, he will take time and you can do it like little bit easy in a short period of time. Reason being you have lot of experience and your brain is mature. So that one is there. The modification of connection in neural networks. When you learn, neural connection is like when you learn something, so your brain actually learn. your brain creates connections with each other. Like brain is made up of neurons, so that is why we call is neural network, where they are connected to each other. So that is neural network. So they adjust themselves according to your task when you repeat again and again, and you become habitual of it, just like driving a car, or like paddling a bicycle kind of thing. Like then you there is no need to think of that thing, process the information. Like initially when you will drive, you will think of where is the clutch, where is the like steering, where is the like how to change the gear. But after some time you become used to it, means there is proper neural network, there is no need to think of anything. And that process becomes automatic. And next one is new emergent concepts arising from repeated self-organization as a result of adopting the demands of changing environment. तो and then ग्रेजुअली धीरे धीरे नए नए कॉन्सेप्ट्स डेवलप होते हैं हमारे ब्रेन में, जो हमें प्रोसेस करने में हेल्प करते हैं. एंड वी ऑर्गेनाइज आवर इंफॉर्मेशन ऑन आवर ओन वे. इंक्रीज कैपेसिटी ऑफ प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एंड मेटाकॉग्निशन, एंड ग्रेजुअली वी गेट increased capacity of problem solving and metacognition. Metacognition means thinking about thinking. Like if you are saying I was thinking why I am thinking like that, right? So that is metacognition, because you are talking about your own thought. So thinking about thinking is metacognition. So that capacity develops when you get mature. So now already we have discussed actually. So encoding, like we know, so encoding, we'll talk about it. Like encoding is converting the information in a way so that you can encode that and store in your brain. So as per researchers, if we'll talk about short-term memory, so maximum the researchers shows that maximum we can achieve is 7, you can say 7 plus minus 2. Yeah, it means 5 to 9 digits we can remember at one time, at a time. So that is the limitation of like short-term memory. And structure and organizing, how you structure the information, how you store in your brain, that is what structuring and organizing information. And it occurs that when learner process the stores information and stores information, and the learner's ability to change over time. Structure and organizing information occurs the learner when the learner process and store information. The learner's ability changes over a time as a result of both maturation, yani we become mature, and experience. We know how to store the information, how to remember any kind of information. When presented with the information, they are asked to remember. Younger children do not rehearse information in order to remember it, because when something is given to you and you have been asked to repeat it, so younger children, they are not able to, because when you learn something you try to repeat it so that you don't forget about it. But younger children were not interested in rehearsing that. And so rehearsing comes from the experience and maturation, right? So that is structuring. And then so one of the most important information processing capacity a child develop is the ability to organize information, because organization and categorization is very important. Suppose you have a library in your at your home, and if you mix all the books, you won't be able to find any books easily, right? So that happens with the information also. So organizing and structuring is very important. How you organize your information, that will help you to recall the information whenever it is needed. So that process like is and we learn gradually through concept schemas, like we prepare. And like chair has, so whatever the chair related information is there, any kind of chair, that will goes into that area. That is what researchers assume. Then one of the basic type of categorization in grouping specific event ideas, people think etc. into concept. I already told you कि like just like concept जो की बात जो हम करते हैं, तो concepts में schemas ये सारी चीज़ें develop होती हैं, and we accordingly like we store information, and we differentiate information from one concept to other concepts. So that is what you can say structuring an organization, that is very important. And then next one is storage and retrieval. Now you have storage, so how you will retrieve information. Suppose you got information related to chair, so your chair related concept will be active in your mind, and you will get the information from long term memory to process this new information, how this will fit in your concepts. So and how you will, and if it is required, it will be stored in that place all there, right? So that is what like you can say storage and retrieval. And there are like different researches that we have given there. People find different kind of thing, like Piaget is like there is a cognitive development stages in children from psychologist Piaget. So he said initially, if you show something to the child, they are not able to, and you remove it, so they think that it is gone, right? It is gone means it doesn't exist. But gradually they learn कि if you remove the object in front from his or her view, then gradually they learn कि it exists, but he or she is not able to see that. So this is called object permanence, like, or object is permanent, it is there, but I am not able to find out. Like we play games with our children, if you remember, we show them something, and then we remove it and we say it's gone, and they think it's gone. But after some time, a certain age, you can say after 1 year, and they know, and they try to find out where you hide the things. So that now at that is the stage, उनका cognitive development इतना है, now they are able to understand that you hide that object, it is not gone. So that is what how it develops. So if you want to read more, you can read cognitive developmental stage by Piaget. That is not there, so I am not going into that. Now we are coming to Flavel et al. 202 made 4 observations about strategy development. So how we so strategy development is not a linear thing. Strategy development means how we store information. So it is not a linear, right? And when developing any particular strategy, development is often stall or even regress before it becomes systematically and correctly used. So how we store information and all that, we develop some strategy. That is why there are people who learn by making notes, there are people who learn by only by listening, and that the different ways. So we all have different ways we develop our own strategy. A strategy will continue to develop after its first demonstration in the mature form. So we keep on developing different strategy until unless it gets mature. Children shows considerable variability in their use of strategy, because they are still learning the different strategies. So they show different, they use different kind of strategies at different point of time, so we call it variability. So there is a variability how they use, which kind of strategies they use. Children often go back and forth in their use of strategies and changing strategies even after they have been found to work well. So and gradually they will find what strategy works for them properly. Children differ in their abilities to integrate different strategies. This is fourth one. Abilities to integrate different strategies into a coherent pattern of successful learning. So children differ, but each one is different. Actually they differ how they use different strategies and for successful learning. So there may be some individual differences, right? Now we'll discuss theories of information processing. So that is 2.5. So first is designing instruction that incorporate best practices for information processing. अब क्या है, why it is important to understand how we learn, how we process, how we retrieve, because you can use that thing in any learning place like schools. So how you instruct your children, how you incorporate these kind of things so that they can learn in a better manner. So जितना बेहतर हम डिज़ाइन करेंगे इंस्ट्रक्शंस को एंड वील यूज़ दिस काइंड ऑफ स्ट्रेटजी, उतना बेहतर हमारे बच्चे और पीपल हु आर इनटू learning, they can learn. This is what designing instruction that incorporate best practices of information. How you if we learn that how it process, so then we can use that thing in real settings for the benefit of many people. This is very important and Bloom's taxonomy and very famous also. So we'll understand this thing first. So Bloom taxonomy and cognitive domain. So Bloom et al. Proposed that information processing can be classified in 6 levels, each more complex than previous. So information processing can be divided into 6, you can say, in 6 stages. वो stages क्या है? The first one is knowing and simply, this one, knowing and simply acquire learner to repeat back what was heard and seen. So I'll use different color so that you can understand. So first level is knowing and simply requires the learner to repeat back what was heard. So what you have seen, that is one thing, that is first level, and this involves very little elaboration. There is no need to elaborate it कि क्या है, क्यों है, कैसे, you just seen, that's it. And the second level is, if we'll talk about comprehension and requires some rudimentary level of understanding that might involve having the student summarize or paraphrase some information. Second level is you elaborate, comprehend, you try to understand what happens, what is there, what information is there, that kind. So that is the second. So remember that this one is first one, this one is second one, and again this requires only modest level of elaboration. तो बहुत डिटेलिंग इसमें भी नहीं होती है. एंड देन इसके बाद आपका आता है द नेक्स्ट 2 levels, application and analysis. Application and analysis involves more elaboration, so significant impact on long-term learning when they are using their during the learning process. So अब application, you know how you apply it, how you analyze it. So application involves using the concept or principle to solve a problem. You have certain previous experiences, you are trying to solve some problem, you use that knowledge. So that is application. While analysis involves understanding the relationship among the parts and how they are originated into whole. So analysis is you are gathering a lot of information from different sources and you analyzing that to get problem solved. So these are the third and fourth, you can say, stages, levels. And now next one is the last 2 levels are synthesis and evaluation, are the most complex and require the highest level of elaboration. Synthesis means synthesizing, whatever information you have, what you got from the environment, and how you assimilate that, understand that, synthesize that, and to make your own understanding. So that is synthesis. And evaluation, what you have done, evaluating that thing. So synthesis involves putting the parts of the component together in a original manner, यानी अपनी thinking involve करना. Original manner का मतलब ये है. While evaluation is a process of making judgment based on the comparison to standard. So these were the 5 and 6th level. So this you have to understand, and these are very important, that can be asked in your examination also. Then we are coming to Sternberg information. Sternberg has given the intelligence theory also. So, Sternberg's information uh, processing approach. So another theory is firmly grounded in the information processing approach was Sternberg, right? So Sternberg, and maybe you have heard the name of Sternberg also, right? So Sternberg theory suggests that development is skill based and continuous rather than stages discontinuous as stage theory believe, and his focus is on intelligence. तो ही सेज ये स्टेज वाइज या लेवल वाइज नहीं होता है, कंटिन्यूस प्रोसेस है जो चलता रहता है. ऐसा नहीं है यू कैन डिफ्रेंशिएट लाइक दिस इज स्टेज वन फ्रॉम 0 to 1 year to 1 to 2 years, stage two, that kind things are not there. People learn continuously. He said that. So it is not. It is not a discontinuous process. It is a continuous process, and he basically focuses on intelligence. What is intelligence? Intelligence is again the information processing approach that you have. This focus on the intelligence separate his ideas from stage theories because it rejects the idea of incremental stages, one by one. Rather suggests that development occurs in the same way throughout the life, differentiated only by expertise, learner, process, and the information. So he says it is a continuous process. You can differentiate only what in kind of like strategies and all expertise the one person has developed and another not developed. So तो स्टर्नबर्ग का जो मॉडल है, इफ वी टॉक अबाउट स्टर्नबर्ग्स मॉडल, है ना, सो देर आर 2-3 things that we will discuss here. One is the first and the very important Stenberg model does not differentiate between child and adult. What he does not differentiate child and adult. He says this is the only process that gradually we learn, right? Also, he deals slowly with information processing aspect of the development. He only talk about information aspects of information processing of development. Cognitive development is viewed as a novice to expert progression. Yani novice means you are new and then you become expert gradually. So in that manner, he sees everything. As one level, becomes better at interaction and learning, one is able to learn more at higher level. So you go from lower level to higher level. Developmental change as a result of feedback. And developmental changes क्यों होते हैं? We get feedback from others, we self monitor, we monitor ourselves, and gradually automatization happens. Like suppose when we start learning language, like we are speaking Hindi or English, so first we learn A, B, C, and then we learn CAT, CAT, BAT, BAT, and then we learn grammatical rules, and now we are fluent. So it become automatic. So in this theory, intelligence comprised of three kinds of information processing component. Meta component, as I told you, what is meta component? Yani thinking about thinking. Performance, how you perform, performance component, and the knowledge acquisition component, how you acquire knowledge. So these three things comes under like he talked about these three components. So meta components, performance component, and knowledge acquisition component. Remember these things. And then we are coming to the let me clean it so that when I am doing that you can understand what I am talking about, right? So in Stenberg's model, each of these three components works together. So each of these model like components, three components works together, understand this, and facilitate learning and cognitive development. Meta component or executive in nature. Executive means which execute the information whatever you require. Suppose you want to solve the problem 10 plus 2. What is 10 plus 2? So metacognition, because you're thinking when you add 2 plus 2, so it will be 6. So all these things are executive. You are executing something. So meta component or executive in nature. They guide the planning and decision making. Planning, decision making reference to problem solving situation. They serve to identify the problem and connect it with experience from the past. So past, like what are your memories and all that, they will uh, like involved, and they take decisions and plan. There is, however, no action directly related to the meta component. They simply direct what actions will follow. Performance component आता है, performance component और action taken in the completion of problem solving tasks. So performance, how you solve your problem, what kind of actions you take. So performance component go beyond meta components because only at thinking level, and they perform the function also weighing the merit, or consequences of action in comparison to other, rather than simply identifying options. So they identify options and what will happen if they choose one thing, one action, and not other, or other not first one. So what will happen? So that was the that is performance component. Now Sternberg's third was proposed that intelligence is the knowledge acquisition component. So third one is knowledge acquisition component, and this type is characterized by the ability to learn new information in order to solve potential problem. So one is like whatever you have, you are doing manipulation with that, that is metacognition, and on that basis you are taking an action, or and if you are getting some other information, so you assimilate it. So that is what knowledge acquisition, because with, like we say, like with like each act and things you learn new things. So that is knowledge. So this type is much more abstract, and that may or may not directly relate to the current problem solving. So maybe you have learned something when you are solving that problem. So this three level view of the intelligence comprise the componential aspect of Sternberg, and but this is the only one three parts of the larger triarchic theory of intelligence. So this was like given by you can say Sternberg कि how we in process information. ठीक है. Now we are coming to Stenberg theory at the I am going in detail because Stenberg theory may come in your exam because it is very important. So Stenberg theory add the component of feedback to theories of cognitive development. So and this suggests that with individual social interaction has some impact on cognitive development. In fact, one of the three parts of theory is based on the context in which learning take place. So he also says that they added the, you can say, feedback. Suppose you are behaving in certain way with someone, and that how that person will respond, that will be a feedback for you. So if like if you interacted and the person responded well, so you have learned that how to respond in certain situation with certain people, right? If you are not got a good response, then you will think what has happened, how to modify oneself. So what is this? This is a feedback, and that this kind of behavior and action happens in some context, right? Some context means like in some social context or social environmental basis. So that is what you can say social environment, so social and environmental things, and that gives us feedback about the thing, about the behavior. In addition, social context as a factor of cognitive development extend work to interactional theories of developing Brunner and Vygotsky. So इसी के बेस पे Vygotsky and Brunner ने अपनी theories develop की, and these theories and other types of premised on the assumption that learning does not occur in vacuum. So what they said कि these theories says जो further develop हुई कि it is not like vacuum. They all, any behavior, anything happens in certain context, and that context is also very important. So similarly, therefore one must discuss the social and cultural context of learning. So we have to understand ki social and culture, why someone is like, someone was Gujarati and someone is like Marathi and someone is like from UP. So there are cultural differences, so that can also affect the behavior of the person. So of central importance is viewing education as more than curriculum instructional strategies. Rather, one must consider the broader context in how culture shapes the mind and provides the toolkit by which individuals construct word of their conception and themselves and their powers. So like context is also very important, so we have to consider social and cultural background also, because that can affect your learning process, right? So that is what these theories says. So this is just the thing. So and now we are done with unit 2, and we'll come up with unit 3.